that we just saw with lactose intolerance in infants that were born with a congenital deficiency, right? That is a variation in their genetic makeup that shapes how they respond to lactose, right? To lactose, sorry, sugar. And with nutrigenomics describes how diet modulates the expression of genes. So your diet can turn genes on and off, right? And there's been a lot of work that looks at cancer, right? And the role of diet in turning, for example, the genes responsible for tumor, both tumor suppression and tumor promotion, right? And so that's been studied. And so, and both studying both of these, right, nutrigenetics and nutrigenomics, is important, right? Because one is if we understand our genetic makeup and how our variations influence how we utilize nutrients or don't utilize nutrients, right? Then it shapes our requirements. So, for example, we don't all absorb vitamin C in the same way. There are folks that are super absorbers, and then there are others that are poor absorbers, right? And then with nutrigenomics, right, understanding how the role diet plays in turning genes on and off is helpful when we think about how might we prevent disease. Collectively, right, nutritional genomics is part of this larger omics field of study, and this is where this big data comes in. And so omics is a rapidly evolving, multidisciplinary and emerging field that encompasses genomics, right? And we just saw, and we're focusing on nutritional genomics, on epigenomics, a field that focuses on charting the location and understanding the functions of chemical tags on the genome. We also have transcriptomics, and it studies actually all of the activity of how much the transcription is produced, which measures the activity of the gene. Proteomics looks at the study of the proteins that are involved in and expressed by a cell, by a tissue, or an organism, as we saw in the video. And then finally, metabolomics. And this is the study of the metabolites present within an organism, cell, or tissue. And so you can already appreciate just the volume of data that is involved in these different the whole field is omics, but in these subspecialties within omics, right? Imagine, right, studying the metabolites within a cell, within a tissue, and then, within the larger organ or organism. And so, each of these fields offers the possibility to understand and view biology from a global perspective, which again, when we think about global, allows us to not just focus on the genes, but then you could also, with the high throughput methodologies, right? This working of using large amounts of data, you can also start to integrate data about, again, the environment and the lifestyle to better understand disease processes. One thing I'm going to stop share about this course that I think I mentioned last week is that for when you're working on your research papers and working on the ideology paper in particular, you'll dive into more deeply into a particular gene variant. But our goal here isn't to leave walking around saying, well, did you know LCT gene, number 526 causes XYZ, right? That's not our goal. We want to understand this field of science. And through our research, we'll better understand the application of this science, right? And the etiology of disease. This field is changing rapidly. Later I talk a little, not today, but I think in another lecture, I have a lecture focused on the All of Us study. And so I mentioned, right, that NIH is still funding that precision medicine initiative. So we're still collecting data, and there's still a lot of research being done to identify different gene variants and understand their behavior, but also how diet influences the activity. So in I think it might be the next lecture, I'm not sure. I'll provide an example of how we study the etiology from a genetic perspective and specifically from a nutritional genomic perspective. But our goal is to understand this entire field. So with that last slide, I feel sometimes, right, we're thrown terms that might be a little intimidating. Some of you in some of your etiology, right, it's possible that in your etiology research paper, you might focus on the metabolome, and that's okay. Maybe somebody else might focus on the proteome, right? But I hope you're not feeling overwhelmed by these terms. I think by the time we get through the semester, we'll start to feel more comfortable being able to dialogue about this field. So I'm going to pause there. Anything coming up for you? Okay. So what I'd like to do next is create smaller breakout rooms. I know you all worked on your synthesis for this week. And so what I'd like for you to consider